Welcome to episode 11 of I Care About Books, which means we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary of this podcast, which is super exciting. I'm Care. I am the social media marketing manager for Book Notification. I do lots of stuff for this website, especially read all the books, and you should as well. So if you are not subscribed yet to booknotification.com, head on over, sign up, subscribe, and get notified. I want to say a big special thank you to my guests who are here to join me this evening to talk about tonight's book. Let's start with the top. Graham McGaugh, founder of Book Notification. Hi, Graham.
Hello.
To my cousin Angela, who is here, a librarian from Ottawa, Canada. Hi, Ange.
Hello.
And the dude who picked the book this month. Hello to Vince, the entertainment editor of booknotification.com. Hi, Vince.
Hey, hello.
So before we get started, I want to make sure we are hitting all the notes on this. One, there are spoilers. We do talk about this book in length, and if you have not yet read Beartooth by Callan, I certainly suggest you read that and then come on back and see if what we have to say aligns with what you thought about the book. And second to that, we also sometimes use profanity, and there is profanity in this book, so there's a very good chance you might hear some curse words. So if you are under the age of 18, we apologize in advance, so please listen or read or watch with caution. Now, that all being said, yes, we are discussing Beartooth by Callan. This book selected by Vince. So I'll throw it to you, Vince. Why did you pick this book?
This was just kind of a blind pick for me last month. I had read another book which has somewhat similar premise that let me down, and then this was recommended if you like that book. I would say both of the books had a synopsis that didn't really match up, whereas the other book I read, that was a disappointment, and for this one, I enjoyed that it wasn't the synopsis.
Was the other book August? Is that what it's called?
No, it was a different author. It was
author? Okay.
I can't remember his name offhand. Sorry.
Okay. Because when I was reading through some reviews today of this book, apparently there's another book, I believe it's called August, don't quote me, but sort of similar in nature, the way the books were written. So a lot of folks came to this book after that book, or after this one, going back and reading that one because they thought they were very similar books and narratives. A lot of things that I read about Callan today in various reviews really talked about the imagery, and somebody had suggested that he subscribes to the idea of simple words that make a big impact. So Angela, over to you. When you were reading Beartooth, did you find that? Because we're going to go over the synopsis of this book in a second, but firstly, I just need to address the imagery in this book.
So that is one of the things that I loved about it, is the language and the way he told the story. So even though the story itself maybe didn't have a lot of layers, it still was an interesting read, and there were some synonyms and not synonyms, but analogies that he made. Analogies, that's the word I was looking for. That were really powerful. So I think that was one of the highlights of the book.
Graham, I know you and I were talking about this book very, very recently, and you were just wrapping up reading it. So since it is fresh in your mind, I know that to be true. Why don't you give us the synopsis of the book?
Well, I just finished it about 10 minutes before this podcast started, actually. I was rushing it. I actually saved it. I took my time with it and so on because I was enjoying a lot of the writing. Fun thing about it is I went in blind for this. I did not read the synopsis at all. I don't even know if we talked about it last month, but I went in completely blind. So that was quite interesting. It was about, it's two brothers who are living quite rough, I would say, just outside Yellowstone, and it's kind of their survival story as they're trying to go hunting. And see, I'm not very good at this whole synopsis stuff. There's a very stereotypical Scottish person who dresses in a kilt and sends them on this mission basically to get all these antlers, and things go wrong, and yeah, that's my synopsis of it. That's why I run websites. I'm not a professional synopsis writer, in case you didn't know.
There were some antlers.
I was really to give Graham a chance to speak. I really did. All right, Vince, give us the synopsis of the book.
Yeah, it's two brothers who they recently lost their dad. They need money, so they do some illegal things. And then they're offered a job that's more illegal. And they at first they say no, but then they yeah, like could have like greater repercussions. Like the first thing they do, you know, it might just be a fine, but the second thing it could be real jail time. They don't want to do it. They end up having to do it. That kind of goes wrong, and then that's where I think the story really starts with just kind of the journey that Thad goes on, his brother goes on. There's a mother character that they reconnect with. There's a lot of different things. I think that the heist, if you want to call it that, the antlers, is very secondary. It's just what gets you to the thing. Yeah.
Okay, so I love that the two of you have tried to break this down, and it was actually a trick question because I also spoke to Angela earlier in the week about this book, and we both agreed that one of the biggest issues that we'd had with the book is the lack of plot. Angela, just
So, yes, it's amusing it's not that you're bad at doing a synopsis, it's that there's nothing to summarize because nothing specifically happens. It's a character development book. So it was like, but yeah, and it's interesting you would ask me about the writing because I couldn't remember the exact phrase, but I remembered the page number and I looked it up while they were talking. And this was kind of my favorite one. Trees like skyscrapers, like celestial tent pegs pounded into the earth to hold the black tarp of the sky in place. And I think that one was probably the one that just kind of stuck in my head with the way he's telling a story, because that's really all it is. It's not a story that moves through time and space. It's a story that moves through the characters.
I have to say, like, so for starters, I want to lead off by saying, guess what, guys? I didn't read this book. I listened to it. And this was my very first time listening to a book. Truly, I've never done an audiobook before. But I thought, you know what? I'll give this one a go. And I'm glad that I did, because the author, or the narrator rather, who read this book was extraordinary. And I really felt as he was moving along in the story that he was bringing the imagery to life. So I thought that was actually kind of neat to listen to a book that relied so heavily on a narrator that could really tell the story through the lens of these two brothers, Thad and Hazen. And I also like when somebody else has said the names of people or has said the names of certain places. So I'm not trying to kind of make that up in my mind as to what it may or may not sound like, which I thought was cool as well. But that all being said, for me, this book was very dry. I just want to start off by saying that I thought it was so rich in detail. It took me a minute to figure out that they were just outside of Yellowstone until they said Yellowstone, but I could imagine the wilderness, the forestry, you know, being out in the backwoods. I mean, we're here in Canada, so it wasn't very difficult for me to sort of outline in my mind where exactly the brothers really were. However, I found the book to be bone dry. It was really hard for me to keep up and to stay interested in these people who weren't very interesting. I mean, the things that were happening to them weren't very interesting. The way that they were described, the development of who they were as people, like the way that Callan described these people and what their backstories were, wasn't very interesting to me. And then the end just left me so confused and going, what did I just listen to? It felt like I was some sort of a third party watching someone live their life, not living their life with them or experiencing their experiences with them, but being told what just happened in this person's life. Like that's how it felt. So it felt a little intrusive in that way to me. So I didn't really get it. I got like this sort of half snapshot of something, you know, kind of shitty living in the backwoods of Montana. And I was like, what did I just listen to? Graham, go ahead. What did you think of the book?
Well, first of all, say the narrator, it was Will Damron, who's he is really good. He's a award-winning narrator. He's actually, I don't think he's won an Audio Award, but he's been nominated for a couple. He's did Freddie McFadden books, Michael Connolly, superb narrator. To listen to an audiobook and get him as your first one, very good. The book itself, I am honestly, I just recently finished it. I'm still very undecided on. Like Angela was saying, the writing was exceptional. Like that passage that she quoted was one that I had taken a picture of my Kindle and loved. There was just so many good writings. Like when he wrote, just little descriptions. I'm just trying to find the one I had here. Yeah, like when the mother's van is still sitting there after a couple of weeks, her van remained in the same exact spot she'd parked it. It's that squatting brown now resting fully on all four rims like a hunkering, manure-encrusted rhino. You know, just writing like that was so darn good. Like the writing itself was fantastic. The storyline, the plot, yeah, not so much. Like I read a book like this recently where things happen in a small timeline and then suddenly it just starts jumping through, you know, like so when he gets his injury and it's jumping from months to months to months ahead, kind of throws you off. Seems like just as action would get packed, like when they're on the rafts and the waves are all going and the current's going and that's when he gets his arm hit. It just kind of flies through that really fast and so on. So that was kind of odd. And the ending was definitely not the definition of an ending. I definitely, when I finished it, I actually did kind of get pre-warned. Kia had messaged me earlier, like, what was that ending? So I thought I was mentally prepared for it. And then I got there and I got to the last page and I hit next page and up comes like acknowledgements. And I like immediately just hit back, like, okay, I must have missed something. But no, that was the ending. So as of now, I'm very undecided on how I feel about it. So I figured by the end of this podcast, I'll be able to summarize my thoughts a little bit better.
Vince, over to you. Did you find predictability? I mean, we're talking about a book that seemed to just be like, hey, the daughter of the Scotsman might have a crush on Hazen. She could potentially be an important character in this plot. Or the, you know, not getting, not having money and the hospital bills might lead to the guys doing something maybe they shouldn't in order to get money. Like, did you find that there was predictability throughout the story or a lot of foreshadowing that kind of led you to believe what might happen next?
No, I don't feel that way. I think it was pretty well told. I did kind of think, you know, Hazen's going to do something crazy, and he does end up doing something crazy. But I believe her name is, they end up calling her Nikki. I thought that was an interesting character. Naomi, I'm sorry. I thought that was an interesting character because you never really find out her deal. And then you just really have more questions than anything. Like, that's not really her dad. That's, you know, where does she come from? You know, and then there's a bond with her and Sacagawea, which is their mother. And the bond, I think, is definitely trauma-based, based on the story that Sacagawea tells, which I think really goes some wild places. I really enjoyed that part of the book. But I mean, I think ultimately this book is just about Thad and his growth. Like, I think he's really unlikable at the beginning, and you're not rooting for him. And he's very put upon. He thinks he has to carry the whole world on his shoulders. And just like through his experiences, like he hates his brother. He has no love for him. And then through all his experiences, he misses him. He loves him. And he just like ends the novel like open to new experiences where, you know, there was parts of this where I was like, do these guys even like women? Do they want to date? Like, Like they're both like almost 30 and they're both just hanging out together. And then by the end, there's a lot of baggage with his mother that he is able to overcome, and then he's just open to the experience as the novel ends. So I enjoyed that.
Well, as he said to the detective, they live in Montana, so that's why they're not really. Yeah, that's not really dating. So
right.
All right, Ange, over to you. Let's talk about Sacagawea, their mom. So when we're talking about descriptions, I wish I had it in front of me. The way Sacagawea discussed their father and being with their father, the idea of when you're out skipping stones, you're looking for the right stone to be able to skip. But then once you find it, you find you don't want to get rid of it at all. And it was just such an interesting sort of metaphor that, she thought she wanted this one particular rock to be able to skip stones with. So she keeps it for herself, realizing she should have skipped it in the first place, which I thought was kind of cool, the way that it was described. But I got the vibe that she, got into some hippie stuff, which didn't really match sort of the timeline that I thought the book was sort of, because they talked about cell phones and they talked about, it gave me the vibe that this story was happening at least in the 90s. But then Sacagawea's sort of experience when the boys were young really goes back to what I would assume be the 60s or even early 70s. So it didn't quite line up for me. But what did you think of Sacagawea and her place, her role in the book? And before I forget, I have to ask this question as well. Did you know she was going to pay for the house? Because you totally knew, right? Like she was going to save the house from foreclosure. Like, come on. We all knew that, right?
Okay, so yes, for the predictability question, there were a couple of those things where you're like, well, they must have done this. But as you go through the novel, you're trying to think, how are they going to wrap this up? And I don't like trying to predict the ending, but I couldn't think of a way to wrap it all up. And that's why when I was left with the choose your own adventure ending, that's the only way to me it could have ended, right? Because anything else that they tried to tie up with a bow would not have made sense. They couldn't have had him actually sail down the river and find his brother, because then what, right? Any other ending would be, and then what? So they had to kind of leave it that way. And when the mother described her relationship with the father, I mean, it was love and whatever, but it still kind of had these underlying tones to me of, man hits woman on the head and drags her home and whatever. And it wasn't like that, but it's still somehow how it felt, even though that's not what she was saying. And then probably because of how much she felt she needed to escape, just to get away from where this is. But what I thought was interesting about the mother character was the way she sneakily kind of crept back into their life. Because if she just moved into the house, they would have booted her the next day. But she camped on the lawn until they were okay with her camping on the lawn. That became all right. And then she took the next little step, and now she's in the house, but she doesn't leave her room. And they're like, we don't like this, but then we get used to it, and it's all right. And then the next thing, she's making coffee in the kitchen every day. And so she just did that so well that she just got back into their life. And it was all planned, right? I mean, you and I know that's how we do things. We do it behind their back and just take the little steps so that they don't see big change and they can get used to the little change. And then you get what you want in the end, which is, I want my family back.
And as a character, though, did you find that the time hop seems strange? Like, where do you think she went to when she talked about meeting these people that she lived with? So just so the readers can get sort of a sensibility of what I'm talking about, Sacagawea actually left the household because they didn't have a lot of money. So she took a job with a girlfriend that took her to a place where she was working with gardens or plants or whatever it may have been, and she ended up bunking with a group of girls in the back forest in a trailer, and whatever money she had she would send back to her husband and the boys. And then eventually she started enjoying the recreational activities that this commune of people were providing her, including psychedelics, and then she felt like she couldn't come back after a while, and that's how she sort of stayed away from the boys' lives for as long as she had. What did you think of the time hop? Did you think, like, can you pinpoint when this story may or may not have taken place? Like, did you get that?
I didn't really know where it fit on the timeline, but I think what happened to her while she was in that commune, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was some violence that had happened to her and she didn't feel like she could return. And then I thought he dragged her away and that she didn't even get to go back for the money. Wasn't that what happened?
Well, there was one part where she was discussing it with Thad where she said she enjoyed it. And when she realized she enjoyed something she wasn't supposed to enjoy, she didn't feel like she should go back. And if she shouldn't go back, she should be able to enjoy to the extent of what she shouldn't be enjoying. And I was like, hey, I know what you're talking about. So, I mean, I just thought that was a really interesting part of the story where she no longer felt like she was entitled to be a mother to the boys. So she would stay her distance for as long as she had until she could creep her way back into their lives. So I thought that part was really interesting and sort of introspective as a parent, where you were already wondering if you're doing a good enough job. And then when you realize you've fallen short, do you just sort of stay and swim in those waters, or do you attempt to make it right? So I thought that was really interesting. I'm going to throw this over to Graham, though, because my favorite thing with all the books that we read is when we see a Scottish person turn up. And so we have to ask the token Scottish guy in the group about what he thought. Tropes and stereotypes. So in this particular book, our character's name is the Scot, and he wears a kilt, and he is a big brutish man who's very imposing. And when he puts his hand on his daughter's head, it looks like he's got her head in a mitt. And he plays the bagpipes and makes his daughter play the bagpipes. Like, it's just amazing all the tropes that they wrote into this. So go ahead, Graham. Tell us about the Scot.
He nailed us perfectly, actually. I'm wearing a kilt right now, and I just actually put down my bagpipes to come on this podcast. That's me, you know. People call me the Scotsman, so pretty much it was interesting because, yes, it was a very out there character, but I do know some people who are kind of they say how he actually isn't even from Scotland, possibly. He's from Columbus, Ohio, which, by the way, is an amazing city, one of my favorite cities of all time. I actually do know Scottish people who they have a heritage of Scotland but have never been there, or they were born there but moved away and so on, and they have that kind of Scottish thing where they're always wearing kilts, got flags and stuff like that. So I can actually see a character like that. And although he was very definitely over the top, all the tropes, as you said, he was a very memorable character, right? Like, he was one that when he showed up, you could picture him, you know, you could picture, I don't even know if they describe him physically, but I'd picture like big orange, you know, orange hair, big orange beard, all that type of thing, right? Like, so it was, let's say it was definitely a very tropey character, but I think it was meant to be, and it was played almost as a caricature, and I have to admit, I did enjoy it. Often I kind of cringe at some of the way they do Scottish characters in books, but I thought this was very well. It was handled very well. I think it was meant to be just ridiculously over the top, you know? So it was pretty good. I liked them.
We all knew he was going to meet a demise, right? Like, please tell me this group knew that there was no way the Scot was making it through the whole book, right? Right? We all knew that? No? Just me? Just me predicting everything?
I kinds of books, they have to have like the danger there, and so if he lives, then they can possibly get money from him. So he's got to go because he's.
So he's got to go. All right, Vince, I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell me about Hazen, because we should probably talk about him too. We've talked about that. I just lost how to say it. We've talked about the Scot. So tell us about Hazen, because I really loved his development in this story. In the beginning, that sort of refers to him as either slow or sort of dim-witted, but then towards the end of the book, his whole, ideas sort of change about him. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about baby brother Hazen, who's not so much a baby at all?
It's, Thad thinks that he needs to be his brother's keeper, and I think the Scot actually says that. The Scot says, you think you're your brother's keeper, but you're not. Hazen may or may not have mental problems. He just has his own way of living, is what I would say. He just believes that he knows best, or whatever it is, that he knows that his way, just he lives his own way, and that's the way it is. He just wants to be outside and hunt. He doesn't really have concerns for things like money and things like that. Even when he gets a job, it's just to get a car, just to trade for a car. It's not even to get paid, really. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like, does Thad need to be his keeper? Because as soon as he's on his own, he does this crime. He's on the run. Like, his brother might have been able to protect him from that, but at the same time, you can't protect someone from themselves. Like, he is always just going to be. And Hazen probably, when he did that, was probably trying to protect his brother there. So yeah, interesting character. He's definitely he's his mother's son, and Thad is his father's son, and that's why there's such a clash there as well. I do want to go back to just one thing that you said earlier about maybe the mom was from the 60s. You don't need to be in the 60s to find some hippie stuff in America, okay? Like, look up Taos, New Mexico. Like, you can find some hippie stuff anywhere. There's plenty of it around me. There's plenty of it all over. You don't need to go back.
Vince is our token American in the group, so we're good to have him to be able to explain to us. So you can get lost in the backwoods and find a commune. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, you can get you one if you want one.
So then, what is your guess for what timeline do you think the story took place?
I think it's modern, or maybe 10, 15 years ago, no more than that. Just these guys don't live a modern life from where they are, so you're just not going to see that with them. He does have a cell phone, but he's not the kind of guy who would be on Twitter. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna lead it off with Vince to tell us what he thought of the book and to rate it out of 10 bells. So Vince, this was your pick, Beartooth by Callan. What would you give this book out of 10 bells?
With this, I think I'm gonna go with 8 bells. When I was like maybe a third of the way through, I wasn't that high on it. But everything past the escape from Yellowstone, I think it just, like, the character development really worked for me. I loved the writing. Sacagawea's story, I thought, was really well told and unique. There's a lot of trauma there. She was trying to find her lost horse, or her parents' remains, and just nearly starved herself to death. And then she's only 19 years old, and this 37-year-old man takes her home, and then he stays. And so there's a lot of trauma there. And then when she decides to leave and disappear, it's like she's a kid, she's a baby, and even though these guys are older, they're just babies. And Thad's finally figuring out, he's nearly 30 years old. And he finally figures it out. I just think it's almost a coming of age story in a way. And that part of it worked for me. So I think I'm going to go with 8 bells.
That's a pretty tall order, 8 bells. So you really, really enjoy this book. And coming off of last month's book, it's nice to see you enjoy a book.
Yeah.
Because Tuesdays with Maury was not your jam. So I'm glad that you got a book in that you really did enjoy. So that's awesome. Okay, so 8 out of 10 bells for Vince. Over to Angela. And I'm very curious about what you're going to actually rate this book, because it seems a little bit of, how do I put this? Like, you've got how much you love the imagery and the descriptions and the analogies and metaphors, but did you actually enjoy the book? So I'm curious what you're going to rate this book about.
It's interesting, because when we chatted about it, I was kind of, I would say, halfway through. And I think that I would agree with Vince. Once the brothers separated, I enjoyed it so much more. And I guess it was because I hated the dynamic between the two, right? I hated the way that Thad treated his brother, telling him not just what to do, but, you know, like kicking him in the face, right? You know, like just being awful to him. And then, you know, and we shouldn't overlook the fact that Hazen made up that whole story about shooting the dog to get the gun away from his brother to protect his brother, right? And so, like, that, if you're trying to say this character is, well, he's dim-witted or he's got some issues, maybe, but like he's well enough to understand that his brother needs help and that his brother doesn't want to accept that he needs help. So he's just going to do this small thing to create the story to make it okay that the gun is nowhere near where that is, right? And so that kind of was an epiphany in the book, like as far as enjoying it. And I think that the writing and the storytelling to me is it's similar to John Steinbeck. And I have this kind of like love-hate with John Steinbeck as well, because he tells stories so well, but you hate all of them, right? Like you hate the fact that everything bad keeps happening to this person and can't something good just finally happen. And so that's kind of how I felt with this. But you can't have a happy ending in a book like this. Like it's not believable at all. So the only thing I exactly disliked about this kind of end part was when he took the skull to the collector and he just said, you know, like, here, I happen to know somebody who wants to buy this. That was too contrived. But other than that, I generally don't like when stories just leave you hanging. But in this case, you get to write your own ending. Like you get to tell the story to yourself how you think it's going to go from here. So I'm actually, I don't know. I think I'm going to give it an 8.
What? Vince is so proud of himself right now. He's like, that book. I picked that. Wow, I'm surprised, but I'm glad. I'm glad that we've got two folks who really enjoyed this book. And that means that your guys would probably recommend it. Would that be fair to say? Yeah.
Yeah, it's honestly there's some parts in the beginning that were like difficult, like with the bear, skinning the bear. I was like, when I first started, I was like, oh man, I don't like reading this. But then after that, it's like, okay, we'll leave you alone.
The books that get better when you stew over them, right? Like initially you're like, oh, I don't like this, but then it makes you think and it makes you feel. And that's really what I'm looking for, something that you remember. You're not like, oh yeah, what was that book about? Like, it will stick with you. And that's where my rating comes from.
All right. Graham, I see that you also found your cat. If I hadn't picked her up, she would have just cawed all the way through this entire podcast. So I'm glad to see that you have your cat. But out of 10 bells, Graham, what would you rate Beartooth?
Oh, I like everyone else. I loved the writing. I thought it was fantastic. My biggest issues with the plot and the characters was more that it felt very undeveloped. Like felt like there could have been a lot more to this book, a lot more to the characters, a lot more to the story. Like I said, I went in. It jumped so fast through timelines and so on. Like so much for it just went so fast, and there was just so much more I think that could have been built on it. So that's this point. So I was actually ready to go with like a 7, but then Angela reminded me of something that I completely just glossed over me. It's that ending, which was a non-ending, but then the bullshit that happened before it with the whole convoluted shit out of nowhere where he just happens to remember this person who he can sell this skull to and all that stuff. Like just hammered in there, like right to the end, like never mentioned before throughout the book. It's almost like he was sitting there at the end, didn't have an ending, wanted them to have money, and then came up with, oh yeah, this random, I did like find the bicycle, but just that whole, this person they forgot about from his childhood, who remembered him and all this weird stuff. I hate that kind of shit in a book where they just like he couldn't go back and like tie it in earlier on. He could have edited it and threw that character in a little bit earlier on just so that we could see, a little bit of foreshadowing. Instead, no, just the hero's a millionaire again. It's like that book where with Joe, John. So 6 out of 10, and the 6 because I hate that show.
Okay, so a little less recommendation by G for this book. Okay, we got it. I have to be honest, guys. Like, this was not a book for me. It really wasn't. I really loved the imagery, but I have said that for every book that we have gone through so far. I think that is what, for me, sets apart a good book from a great book, is just how well you can imagine in your mind what the author is seeing or telling you about. So, I mean, that to me was important, and it was gorgeous, and it was so well written. The imagery was phenomenal, but I'm still not enjoying this book. I did not like this book. I found it so dry. I really just couldn't get into it. These were not likable characters in my mind. All of these people just didn't make me want to follow their stories. I don't care where they go from this. I wish I hadn't been invited into their lives, because I don't like anyone. And I felt like I wasn't a part of the story. I felt like I was just being very nosy on some people's lives that were going through some very critical moments. Felt like being at a party where somebody was oversharing about stuff that happened to them. And I was like, yeah, I could have gone my whole life without knowing any of this. And that's really how I felt about this book. I did not enjoy this book. And I certainly didn't enjoy an ending where I didn't know where anything had ended. I just am not one of those types of people. So this for me was a very hard read. And I guess I wasn't reading, I was listening to it. But it just did not captivate me in a way that I had hoped that it would. Now, that all being said, my son will love this book. And so much so that he is actually planning to listen to it as well, because this is right up his alley. So if a book ends up being recommended, that also should give it at least a point. I think that there are a lot of folks out there that would probably really love this book, especially if you're into wilderness, backcamping, heists, family drama dumping, a bunch of different folks going on a bunch of different directions and somehow sort of ending up in the middle and whatever, then perhaps maybe this book is for you. It is not for me. And this will be the lowest score that I have ever given on this podcast. This is a fucking 3 for me. And I'm giving it that low because I can't give it a 0 if I'm going to recommend it.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry. And you know what? I really appreciate being able to read various types of books, but this was just so out of my wheelhouse. I didn't get it. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the story. I didn't realize there was a plot. So unfortunately, for me. So that's okay, because I gave it 10 and you guys laughed at me. So it's all good.
Yes, I'm still not over that 10 out of 10 for When You Reach Me. That was a low point of the podcast.
So good. And that's the beauty of this podcast, guys, is that, you've got 4 different people, 4 different readers who will interpret a story 4 different ways. And I think that is so unbelievably cool. So whether or not you agree with my analysis, or maybe Vince's, who really enjoyed this book, what we want you to do is read it and enjoy it for yourself and rank it yourself out of 10 bells. That all being said, that is just about the end of episode 11. But before we go, we've got to pick next month's book, and it'll be the anniversary show, because it'll be the last episode of the year, which is cool. I mean, just not chronologically, just as the 12th, and I think that's what we do.
That is chronological, right?
It's not like a fiscal year of January to December. Next month it'll be 12, so that must mean 12 months, so that means a year. Yes. Okay. Angela gets our pick, which is very exciting. Angela's last pick on the podcast was actually The Biddlemores by Jan Arden, which I think we all kind of seem to super enjoy. Vince, I don't know if you had a chance to read that one yet.
Oh, I didn't know.
No. So I think we probably read that book because it's pretty freaking awesome. That one's really fun. But Angela, you have to redeem yourself from the Poisonwood Bible.
So
I on this podcast.
Another great book.
I haven't actually finished this book. I've only read 20 pages. So I can't 100% put my hand on my heart and say this is going to be amazing, but it had a good start. It has a great title. So you can't really compete against this. I know it's backwards. The Sex Lives of Cannibals. So, I mean, obviously that's what attracted me to picking this book up in the bookstore. And it's basically the story of a guy who really doesn't like the regular day-to-day of trying to earn a living. And so he decides he's just going to pick up and move to an island, which is supposed to be a paradise, but it turns out to be kind of not. But I think that it's going to be interesting just because I like the style in which he's writing, and he was a writer when he was working. So he was a journalist. He tried various different things, but he didn't want to be a real journalist. He just wanted to write fun things. And so I think he's going to be a good author. He seems to have a pretty mixed background. He's Dutch and Danish, I think, or he's a mix of different nationalities. And so from the start, it seems like it's going to be probably kind of interesting, and it's his story. It's a memoir, so it's nonfiction, which is a little bit different. I mean, we did nonfiction with Tuesdays with Maury, but yeah, I think that does a little bit exceed the max page. It's 360 pages, but it seems like it's going to be a light read.
I missed the author title. Who's the author?
The author is J. Martin Troost.
J. Martin Troost.
And Martin is spelled, the Dutch way with 2 A's.
Very cool. Guys, what do you think of that? Have either of you read this yet? The Sex Lives of Cannibals?
No, it looks, I just read the synopsis. It looks pretty funny, which we could probably use after this book, because say what you will, not many jokes in this last one, so that'll be nice.
I gotta say, it's very brave. I respect Angela for reading, just 20 pages and recommending we read it, because I've fallen into that trap before where I read the first 10 pages of a book and I'm like, Vince, you gotta read this book, it's so good. And then I read a little bit more and I'm like, dude, please, yeah, I hope you have not started it, because it is horrible. It is worse than the Poisonwood Bible. That's how bad this is getting.
Poisonwood Bible is a great book. I don't know. That can't be the example we use.
It's like a metric now. Everything is based off the Poisonwood Bible.
Is that actually the one that was rated the lowest? I'd love to know.
The one that was rated the lowest was tonight's book, actually, followed by Poisonwood Bible, Still Life, and then Chaos 10, When You Reach Me.
That was a great book. Everybody needs to read that book.
And that was actually only that one only got lucky because Vince hasn't rated that one. Kaya gave it a 10. We gave it 5 and 4. I'm sure Vince would. Can you read that book, Vince, and then just rate it so we can add your rate to the site and make it the lowest?
Give it a 4. I think I'm not going to do that.
Well,
it would save me though,
gave it 10,
because my book is so far down. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be the lowest.
We need to change our rating system. Angela and I should have higher priority. We should count twice because we have the best taste.
Or Vince, what we should do is you should get points based on how many books you read in a year, right? So the more you read, the more your vote is worth.
Okay.
What?
Graham might be beating us up there, though.
I like that. Yeah, okay. I get like quadruple the points of everyone else. I'm good with that.
Did you guys just implement an electoral college into my podcast rating system?
We need an algorithm now.
We're getting rid of the Voting Rights Act on this podcast. So,
well, tonight we read Beartooth by Callan. A great opportunity for you to read it now and come on back and watch or listen to this podcast and see if you align with any of our opinions, especially mine. Let's go around the circle again. Vince, out of 10 bells.
8 bells.
It's just because you picked it, I think. I feel like you're
He explained why.
Sure.
8 bells for me as well.
8 for you as well. And Graham?
6. 1, 2, 3, 5. Yes, 6. 6
out of 10 bells. And I gave it a 3 because I feel bad. And for next week on the podcast, we will be reading The Sex Lives of Cannibals. So if you want to pick that up from your local library or Libby or Audible or anywhere you receive your media and your movies and your books and all of that other great stuff, make sure you do that. Read The Sex Lives of Cannibals and come on back and join us next month for I Care About Books. A huge thank you to Vince, Angela, and Graham for being here with me tonight. And don't forget to head on over to booknotification.com. We'd love to see you there. Sign up, subscribe, and get notified. Bye, guys.
Right.
Yeah.